So here we are on a Monday afternoon, and it looks like there's a turn in the weather. And
Uh,
Pat and I rarely talk about the weather, but we'll have to talk about it now, won't we, Pat? There's a
yes,
turn in the weather, and I gather there's a gale blowing up over Donegal.
there is actually. I noticed, like as I keep telling you, there's trees around my house, and I noticed they're shifting around it, and there's bushes. So, and there's a sort of a, by God, there is a real autumnal feel. I have to use watch how I say that word, but there really is an autumnal feel out there today.
Yeah, yeah. Do you like autumn, Pat?
I do. You see, Jude, I was born in October. There must be something in the season you're born. You like it?
Well, I had a teacher, a Donegal man actually, Sean B. Kelly, when I was in St. Columns.
Yeah.
And I remember him us talking like, what season? Asking about what season, what's your favorite season? I think we were doing an essay on it.
Mm.
And everybody was saying spring and summer and all. And he said he liked autumn best.
Uh,
And we couldn't understand. I couldn't. He said, "Oh, things are full fruition, and you see
uh,
the move from sunny days to sparser days." I still don't understand how anybody could like autumn more than spring or summer. I
I
really
know.
can't.
My father was a countryman, and he absolutely loved spring. I know he was
Yeah,
he came from a farming background, and I
yeah.
remember one day he came along and he says, "Oh, there's a big bull finch or something." He says singing there, and I even wondered how he knew the different birds. But
Uh-huh.
he loved spring. He says everything's coming back to life. He says nature, this is providing for us. He says the air had changed. Everything. He really loved spring.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My father used to say the land is everything.
I
That's where we get everything from. We
Yeah,
build
well,
on
that
it,
was
we
that was like
walk on it, we.
Scarlett O'Hara's father and Gone with the One Woman. The land,
That's
the
right.
land.
Yes. Well, anyway,
Right.
what there's is there a guy in Scarlett O'Hara, Brett?
No, Rhett Butler.
Oh, Rhett Butler. Well, we're not going to talk about Rhett Butler. We're going to talk about people like Philip Brett of the DUP.
Yeah,
Because you have drawn my attention, Pat, to the fact that there was some figures released last week, and that some sections of unionism are still reeling from them. Now, we talked about it last week a bit, but I
yeah,
think it, as you were saying, it requires a little bit more looking at.
yeah. Jude, what struck me is that I was listening. I've been dipping in and out and doing social media, and I've watched
Hmm.
The View and so on, and I've listened to a wee bit of Nolan and a wee bit of Talkback. And suddenly now, and I heard Mike Nesbitt and various others, I said, no, that it's okay. You can extrapolate all the sort of things from the figures from last week, but here's the thing: the big priority is to make Northern Ireland work for everybody, and so on. And
Who
I
said
thought,
that? Who said that?
Mike Nesbitt and various others. I've heard
Hmm.
there were even Philip Brett, I think, was one of the
Aye.
guys
Oh,
saying
yeah,
there.
yeah, yeah.
And it's the keepers, they're not alone. I heard 3 or 4 other people quite recently saying it as well, whose name escaped me. So it's not a state secret.
Were these
And I was
all
thinking,
unionists?
these are all unionists, yeah. Oh, that's what the point I'm making here. And I was thinking to myself, where were these people when they were looking for a hard Brexit Act? Where were they when they were looking for an Irish Language Act? Now, by the way, which didn't affect them. It was basically giving somebody else a right. Where was when Gregory was saying, curry my yogurt? No, and all the other things that went on. Where was the reaching out and the sort of let's make Northern Ireland work for everybody then? Now, seeing and like the one thing is Sam McBride, I wrote it down. He said, uh, where was it? He wrote it. I can't even remember where it is, but he said somewhere along the line, uh,
Yeah.
only the historically illiterate would dismiss the significance of Catholics outnumbering Protestants in Northern Ireland. But the real significance of this is far more likely to be about how Northern Ireland looks and feels within the Union rather than Irish unity.
Hmm.
Basically, what I'm taking from that is he's saying, hey, this whole picture has changed, and our relationship with Britain is now going to be the interesting one, not about Irish unity. Now, I
Well,
take it he's suggesting that the relationship with Britain has changed.
I think that's a very kind interpretation of Sam's words. My response to that would be pish tosh Sam. Um, the first thing that the Catholic majority thinks when they hear these figures is how do these relate to a border poll / United
Yeah,
Ireland? Likewise, when every unionist saw those figures, the first thing that crossed their minds was how much closer does this bring us, or does it increase the danger of a United Ireland? a border poll. Sam knows that. He's a veteran
Absolutely.
journalist. Why does he say this sort of nonsense about this is the big thing here is how will we make Northern Ireland work better? You know, there was a time for that. There was a time. Joe Brawley made this point very well.
Yeah, about
1998 was a time to make that happen. And I think there would have been a lot of people receptive because a lot of people were saying the bad old days are gone. We've now got a part of in the power of the running of Northern Ireland. You know, people were open to it. Certainly, middle class Catholics were open to it.
Yeah.
Not now, because we could. In fact, you know, I know some at least one Republican who voted for Brexit.
Yeah.
Because he knew what effect it would have. How dumb! I don't mean to be insulting, but how dumb can the DUP be that they would push for a hard Brexit?
Jude, I think one of your contributors on your podcast made a very, very good point.
On my blog, yeah.
On your blog, but he made the point that when there was talk of putting on a hard border on the island of Ireland, all the Unionists were saying, use technology. He says, well, why the hell can't they use Newton technology now in the Irish Sea? I thought it was a brilliant point. Because they're not going for technology now, are they?
No, that's for sure. But this idea of how Northern Ireland looks and feels within the Union, rather than...
No, I don't know if you're being fair to Sam. I think the point he's making is there's a big issue now for the Unionist people, how it feels. Dude, the days of there being a Protestant parliament for a Protestant state, you know, and so on, that now is clearly gone. And it's clearly gone. And I think he's sort of saying, hey, wait a minute, for Unionism now, how does it feel to be within the Union and being in a minority position? Now, a lot of people are going to have to face up to the fact that, hey, Jude, things are going to change.
Well, no, I must disagree, Pat. He says, I've got the wording that you just read out. He says, the real significance of this is far more likely, far more likely than the idea of a border poll, far more likely to be about how Northern Ireland looks and feels within the Union rather than Irish unity. I really just cannot. I haven't met a single nationalist or Republican who has said, "Did you see those figures? God, it'll be have a very different Northern Ireland now, won't it?" That's not what people think or say. No, and I don't believe Unionists think or say that either. They're worried as a result of that.
Well,
I think Sam is trying to encourage us.
No, I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt.
I know you're very kind, Pat. You're terribly kind.
No, but I think he's referring to Unionists rather than nationalists. Dude, they must be thinking now about their role within the Union. They must be.
Oh, of course they are. Yeah. But that's another point. You see, I'm not sure that they weren't thinking about. You're referring now to how they've been treated by Britain. Yeah. Well, you know, that surely has been obvious to them for a long, long time, ever since the Good Friday Agreement. I mean, what did they get out of that? They got power sharing. Power sharing for a party that had for 50 years ruled the roost without question. That's not good news. You know, that's really putting it up to them. Again and again, the Unionists here have been given blow after blow by the Tory government or even the Labour government in Britain. Their power and their status has been diminished over the years. So I would compare them to, I think I said this the last day, I would compare them to a colleague at work maybe, or a partner in a marriage or a relationship. And the partner, you're continually kicking him around for ages and ages and ages. And then one day the partner, well, you could either say they produce a club or they produce a knife, or maybe they just pack their suitcase and they say, I'm out of here. And at that point, the guy who's been abusing for the last 50 years or whatever says, oh, we'll have to work out a system where you're respected and happy.
Yeah. That analogy, I agree with a lot of that, actually, because that's pretty much, in fact, I think it's, I don't want to be ungenerous, but I regard some of the comments I've heard recently as a wee bit cynical. You know, when there was a well-known dairy journalist some years back came to me and asked me, would the journal actually go for this thing about setting up a separate council on the water side rather than having, because the Unionist people had lost the control of it. So he wanted a separate council for the water side. And I was thinking, I've said to him, are you kidding? So in other words, when you've lost control of the West Bank of the city, now you want to go over east and you want to rule that. So it's all about control, where they can get their way. And I thought, and by the way, that's been there. There was a famous guy called Sandy McGowan, Frank Curran, who was the editor of the Journal, told me one time he was Unionist, but he says he was a very decent guy. And Frank says to him one day, he says, Sandy, how can you vote for this bigotry and this sectarianism and discrimination? He says, Frank, how do you think I feel with my hand up and my head down? Basically, he was ashamed of what was going on. And dude, we had 50 years where not a single bit of legislation from the nationalist community was passed at Stormont.
No, that's completely true. There was a bit on birds.
Yeah, birds. By the way, Jude, about 6 months before Stormont fell, that was some total of it. So, Jude, and all this. But here's the point, Jude. You sort of say, unionism never misses an opportunity to miss an opportunity, and this is an example of it.
No, exactly. You put it in a nutshell, Pat. You never miss an opportunity to miss an opportunity. But they should have seen this coming. I'm kind of surprised. Maybe they did see it coming. Maybe they've seen the signs ever since the late 90s. And do you remember Jim Molyneux said that peace would be the biggest threat to the union ever? Yeah. And he was spot on,
Yeah. Peter Robinson said it about a good while ago. I remember it was up at the McGill Summer School about 3 or 4 years ago, that unionism would need to start reaching out. And he was almost slapped around the face for saying that he was a traitor to the cause. Now, Jude, the other people are saying, but hey, Jude, here's a question I've got for you, because you belong to the tribe. I'm a sort of half outsider. What do you think it's like for a unionist these days, an older unionist who spent all his life growing up in the North and all the rest, and yet you referred to it earlier? What does it feel like today when suddenly the reality that the founding of state, the actual foundation, has just been blown away?
Well, I'll tell you the immediate comparison that strikes me. It's like somebody who has been, say, in Catholicism. It's like somebody who was brought up with, as I was, with a strict code of ethics and commandments and things you do and things you didn't do. That was the way it was. No ifs, buts, maybes. No divorce, no contraception, no anything. No fish and Friday. No, you got fish and Friday, but no meat and Friday.
No meat and Friday.
So they grew up with that all their lives. And now, if they look around them today, all of those things have been questioned. Many of those things have been simply ignored by the few who currently still go to weekly mass.
Yeah.
But they accept it because they have to. There's no two ways about it. And in fact, I would go further. I would say the church in practice, certainly the clergy in the North here and the South, they accept it. They say, well, these people are exercising, I suppose, the way they talk is, these people are exercising their conscience. It's a changed world. I must give them my blessing. Yeah. That's, I think, how the unionist would feel, who was brought up with thunder of drums and, kick the Pope bands and no problems, and the 12th is a great day. And now they've got to accept the fact that that's all gone. Goodbye to all that. And if you're forced, if you've no other option, you learn to accept things.
Yeah.
Don't you think?
I would, sometimes even and I've been involved in this for a very long time, you sort of ask yourself, why the lack of generosity over the years? Why the lack of, surely anybody with a brain could have seen that it was going to be counterproductive. And along the way, anybody that tried to reach out was sort of slapped down. Paisley did it right, left and center, sell it. Surely it was all short-termism. Where was the big brain? Where was the big plan? Where were the people who said, look, wait a minute, this is not the way to go?
But I think it comes out of their history. The history of unionists or people who come from Scotland or England to here, it was a sort of a fortress thing. They had to go into places where they really weren't wanted, and they had to find a way of protecting themselves. So I think that sort of fortress, defend the fort, that was ingrained in their thinking. To a point where it's just virtually impossible to get shot of it. I mean, I'm not saying there weren't unionists who got past all that, but it was, I would say it was either a conscious or an unconscious effort they had to make. Because
you see Mike Nesbitt and Doug Beatty and people like that, and almost, you can see they're nearly described as traitors, by the Unionist people. The Nationals might view them a different way, but by their own tribe, in the sense that they're too liberal.
That is such nonsense. It
I
really is.
know. I am not saying.
Yeah,
But I'm saying.
yeah.
But like I heard Nesbitt being derided, on various programs, that he's too far ahead of his own people.
Well, I'm not sure what it is, in what respects he is far ahead of his own
No,
people.
but that's the point I'm making. Jude. And if you're sitting as a nationalist, you're going, what are you talking about? But in unionism,
Well, actually, maybe it's more complicated than that too. Because if I was saying, you hark back to the old days in Blood and Thunder, and kick the Pope and all the rest of it. The nearest to that is the aptly named Traditional Unionist Voice Party.
yeah. Well, that's what
But
I'm
the Traditional Unionist Voice Party, Pat, don't forget, is a very small party.
Yeah.
That's a party of one man, really.
But hold on, Jude. Let's stop here, Dr. Collins. TU voice scared the shit out of the DUP.
Oh, such language.
Yes, but I'm going to the country here. They without question, they rattled the cages of the DUP big time.
Yes, that's right.
And they got up to something like 15% or 16%, the same as the DUP had come down to at that stage.
But that was only in polls, That wasn't in actual seats or in a real election.
No, but had there been an election then, I would have liked and seen what was happening.
Well, it would have been interesting. But you'll notice that those people who were sort of in favour of the TUV have since, in terms of voting, gone back to the fold. I mean, it's the DUP that got the seats.
But hold on, but that's exactly the point. Jim Allister pulled the TUV or the DUP more to the TUV side of the fence than the other way around.
Well, that's true. That's very true. That's very true. There was a point, I remember we talked about this, where the DUP seemed to be in the middle of, on one side, the TUV pulling them to the right wing, and the other side of them, the Alliance pulling them to the left wing. But I think the bigger of the two dangers for them was the Alliance.
Yeah.
That people who would go to the Alliance. But you see, that's tricky too, because if you say that that's the bigger danger, you say that because, in fact, you see the thing as a slippery slope.
Yeah.
Like, if I'm a unionist, and now I join a party that says it's agnostic on the constitutional question, somebody said it on Talkback today, they're going to have to make a decision if there's ever a border poll.
Yeah.
And the only decision I have to make is, do we have a party position on this, or do we allow people to vote with their quotation marks conscience? I would nearly lay money that they won't take a party position on it.
No,
because I think it was you that said there are too many nationalists or Catholics, let's say, within the Alliance Party who probably would prefer to vote for a United Ireland. And it came to that point.
Yeah. Remember Anna Lowe? She was a councillor.
Yeah, I do well.
Remember, she actually said that she was in favour of United Ireland, and the roof fell in. The Alliance Party suddenly found itself, it was no longer middle of the road. It was actually very much on the Unionist fold. But I don't know if that still holds true.
I thought they didn't react very well to, I thought it was a poor response from, their philosophy. Wasn't working very well in the way they responded to Anna Lowe. Anna Lowe actually got it in the neck for referring to this place to the north as a colony. I think that was the word that really ignited the touch paper.
Yeah.
And in a way, the Alliance Party kind of didn't disown her, but it said it says, well, that's
Jude, they certainly didn't support her.
No, that's right. They didn't support her, and if anything, they put good, clear blue water between themselves and Anna. And shortly after that, Anna stopped being a political person. Yeah. She finished, and maybe I'd finished her career. But anyway, it's hard to know. I still know people who will say, "Oh, well, that's all very well. Wishful thinking is this talk about a border poll, and even there was one. There's a lot of people who would vote against it." My considered opinion is that if now what they're talking about is within this, well, I noticed last night or somebody on TV's talking about the next decade, right?
Yeah.
10 years. But Mary Lou McDonald was talking about the next 10 years in 2020. So
Yeah.
I would take the next decade as being this decade we're in, from
Yeah.
21 to 30. So if I think if a border poll is called then, and I'd lay money that it will be called within that time,
Yeah.
uh, I think they'll win it too. I
Yeah.
think they'll win it too. Now it'll present real problems when they do
Yeah.
win it, but I think they'll win it just the same. What do you think?
Well, your guy, the academic Brendan O'Leary.
Yeah,
He's a I can't remember. Me and you have discussed this before, but anyway, the short version of the long story is he is predicting there will be a border poll before the end of this decade.
that's right. Yeah, yeah. I would agree with that. I would agree with
Yeah.
that. But do you think am I being overly optimistic when I say I think that the border poll will be won? Because don't forget, it can't be called except this is where we're back to what they were talking about in Talkback today. It has to be decided by the Secretary of State, who must believe that there's a majority in favour of constitutional change.
Well, someone see when Sinn Féin's the biggest party, when the Catholic population is now bigger than the Unionist Protestant vote. Like there are, I presume there are other factors have to be taken into account. But hey, the tide is running that way, and that's you can't run away from that either. That's a fact. The number of kids going to school are the national from a Catholic background is way ahead of the Unionists. And the Unions are the oldest part of the population. Due to another 5 years, it'll be significantly different. Andy McClafferty, the BBC's political editor, said within maybe the next 5 years, the Catholic population could be well over that 50% mark,
Oh yeah, for sure.
which would be a defining moment.
Do you have any sympathies with Unionists? You don't feel they're like I was talking about a battered wife or partner, and producing a knife for a club or just packing their bags and going. But in a way, Unionists are kind of like a battered wife too, because they've been kicked around by the Tories and Labour. So, like the battered wife, where can I go? Battered wives have a habit of staying because they can't think of where the hell they're going to go if they just don't.
Yeah, well, you know what? I don't see you're being very kind in a way. I don't see the Unionists as victims much. They've been less than generous. And the way I see them, like the white South Africans or the Israelis, to a certain extent, I don't, you reach out. Nelson Mandela said, "You reach out to your opponents and give them room to maneuver." There was no generosity, or very little generosity, from the Unionists when they were in control. Everything had to be taken from them rather than given. So while I have great sympathy for the individual Unionists, and I understand totally that maybe the fears they have about about their identity. I understand that and I have total sympathy. But unionism as an ideology, no, don't have really great sympathy for it.
Well, I think they're fearful because somebody, I was it Gregory Campbell maybe said, we see what would happen to, no, maybe it was Jim Allister, we see what would happen to Unionists in a United Ireland from what happened to Unionists in the 26 counties.
That one really should be nailed. A lot of the Unionists down south, went north because he saw it was as a mecca. There was a man, I'll even give him his name. It's a simple example. Jim Clark. He was a Protestant shop owner in Letterkenny. He had 2 or 3 daughters. And the minute he retired, he sold his shop and moved, I think, to Coleraine. Nobody forced him out. He was more than what he got. A lot of others made this. And the other thing as well, Jude, of the first 4 presidents of the Republic of Ireland, 2 of them were Protestants. So see this thing. And if you look at the current cabinet, there was what do you call her, the girl from London. She's in the cabinet. There was 2 or 3 Erskine Childers and various other people. This sort of thing that Protestants got a raw deal. They might have the Catholic Church might have sort of was writ large maybe, but hey, Protestants were not discriminated against.
Yeah. Well, actually, I was thinking in terms of if you think of any colony, since Anna Lowe used that word, any colony that gets its independence usually is coming out of a system where say Africa, where white people, a small minority of white people, were running the show, and black people were denied their privileges and rights.
Yeah.
Now, so the black people get their independence and their control, and it's now a black administration that's running the country. It's not. It wouldn't be. If I was a white there, I'd be thinking seriously about getting out too.
Yeah.
Because if you abuse people for decades, what do you expect? there's got to be some people who are going to say, oh, you so-and-sos, we're in the whip hand now and we'll give it to you.
Yeah.
So it's not that surprising. And even if it didn't go that far, if you're used to being in a society where you're respected through fear or whatever, or envy even, and then that's taken from you, it's a bad place to be. You'd be tempted to go to another country or somewhere and try to, get to another stage of respect
as you were saying earlier, Jude, I understand totally the fear that the unions have, and I have great sympathy for individual unions.
Yeah.
And I would like to reach out and sort of say, look, wait a minute, I have no intention of treating you unfairly or anything else.
Yeah.
And I hope you'd accept me. I know most people aren't going to do it. But if you're going to say up until now, Jude, unionism has not been a kind or generous or outreaching philosophy. Far from it. It's been nasty and sectarian and bigoted.
Well, the people who say that the reason they are fearful is that they assume that the Catholic or the nationalist majority would treat them the way they treated the nationalist minority.
Yeah.
Which is actually a mistake. I'm glad to say that I'm totally convinced of that. If anything, I think maybe too much provision will be made to make sure that unionism or people who are unionists are comfortable. Okay, let's move on because we're down to about 8 minutes left, Pat. Is it? It is. 6. My God,
less than 6 actually.
Time flies when you're really spinning out wonderful thoughts. You want to talk about the royal personage of King Charles? Was that it?
No. So, there's this I have a fascination with why is the far right sweeping Trump? You could say Trump was far right. You could say Boris Johnson was pretty far right.
Yeah.
Italy yesterday, a woman with almost like an Irish name, Giorgio Meloni.
But that's spelled like melon, M-E-L-O-N.
I know, but I used to know if I call him Meloni. I wonder if anyway, doesn't matter. She is the brothers of Italy or something. The parties. She won the election in Italy. 1 in 4 Italians voted for her yesterday. Last week in Sweden, there was the Swedish party. Swedish Democrats took 10 years ago. They were a fringe group. They got 20% of the vote, and now they're the main opposition party in Sweden. And in Hungary, there's a man called Orban, who last week the EU decided not to give him any more funding because they said Hungary is no longer a functioning democracy. And then in Poland, the leading party there has swung very far to the right, and they're even now appointing their own judges and the courts to ensure that they know any decisions that they want. So what's it all about?
Yeah, well, have you any thoughts yourself? I'll give you mine.
I think when people when in a recession, people go to the right, but fascism really scares me.
Oh, well, it scares me too a lot. But yes, I can understand. You see, well, we know, both of us know, that if people are feel left behind, locked out, right? Yeah. If they could find a strong man who'd kick the door down, or says he'll kick the door down, or a strong woman that says she'll kick the door down, they say, "Oh, terrific!" And that even apart from the strong man or strong woman being effective, there's something in human nature that likes other people to take control for them. Yeah. You know the way you get your mommy to look after you when you're wee. I think many people never quite, well, perhaps it's human nature. They never quite get out of that. There's a sort of a relief to pass over responsibility to somebody else. You do it. I know. I trust you. You're a sort of a Superman or a Superwoman.
I think, well, Sir Paisley did that. I remember having a discussion with Bishop Mahaffey in Derry, and he says, "Pat, people don't support that sort of review of Paisley's." And I said, "Well, with respect, Dr. Mahaffey, he tops the poll, so quite a few people do." But he says, the funny thing is, he says privately they don't support him, but then they vote for him in an election. And I think that thing that you said, Jude, they vote for the strong man. They didn't necessarily like him a lot. They didn't necessarily agree with everything he said, but he was their man. He might be a bollocks, but he's our bollocks. You know that
this is sort of going sideways here, but I was reading an article, I think it was Irish Times today, and there's an operation that quite a few people are having done to them, men mainly, but not exclusively. that makes them taller. And it
Jeez.
involves breaking their legs, then putting in spikes or steel pieces of steel, and
Yeah.
their height can be extended to anything up to 6 inches. Now,
You're
what height
joking.
are you?
I'm about 6 foot tall.
Aye. Do you like that?
Well,
I think you're more than 6 foot, Pat.
well, I'm a big fella. That's all right.
Aye,
Right,
that's
but
right.
6 foot
But
tall.
I think
Yeah.
you're more than 6 foot. Is it good feeling or bad feeling? Would you rather be smaller?
No, I wouldn't rather be smaller, but I wouldn't rather be taller either. I'm just happy enough where I am.
Well, you see, I think most people, if they got to most men, if they were 6 foot, would say, "Yeah, that's great." I'm not 6 foot. In fact, I used to be 5'11". I've shrunk over the years. I think I'm about 5'10", or I think maybe they said 5'8" the last time I was measured in the hospital. But isn't that a very interesting idea that people so much value having size,
Yeah.
good appearance,
But
that they
okay, let's go sideways for another one. Like, I saw a woman the last day, and she, without question, has had someone done to her lips.
Aye.
She's like, she looked at the famous trout pout, and
Yeah.
I'm going, who the hell told you that was attractive?
But I mean, all right, we're right down to the last minute. But in fact, they've done some research in this, and they say that leaders in political parties in the Western world, anyway, they do tend to be taller rather than smaller. I know they say a little dictator, but they do say the height. I think it does help. Women like tall men as well, Pat. Do you know?
Yeah. I never found that personally.
Well, go out and explore it this very minute. Okay, don't
Okay,
tell the
Jed.
wife.
I will indeed. Good luck, Jed.
Okay, Pat. Thanks.